Hello and welcome, Bravehearts. Thank you for joining us on our very first Rethink show. Rethink Fit show to help you rethink fit. Why? Because being fit goes beyond strength and appearance and endurance. It requires that we take action for our mental, emotional, spiritual, and functional selves too.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Mindy.
And our background has been in the fitness and the wellness industry. We helped start what's known as the natural bodybuilding movement and fitness model search events. And we ran those events all around the world. And having witnessed thousands and thousands of athletes and personal trainers and gym owners and fitness enthusiasts, we got to really see that being fit, like Mindy was saying, goes so much beyond just strength and appearance. It's about the mental, the emotional, the social, the physical, the functional health too. And we've developed a whole concept to help people rethink the way that they're looking at life, rethink the way that they're looking at fitness, rethink the way that they're looking at their own self-care. So this Rethink Fit show is where we interview athletes and models and experts and role models that truly represent what it means to be fit, where they get to share their wisdom, their information, their inspiration, and their insight to help you go on your journey of self-care.
On each and every show, you will notice that each of our guests are going to issue a call to action, which is a simple action step that any of you can take to make gains, whether it's in mindset or in your mind, whether it's in your mind, your body, your heart, or your spirit.
So on this show, we're live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Rumble, which means you get to participate.
Ask your questions.
Yeah, this is a show for all of us to join in a conversation. So ask your questions and we'll do our best to answer it. When Mindy was talking about action steps, it's providing you an opportunity to take simple steps on your journey of transformation. So you'll find out from Tony what he's going to issue today. He's our guest. I'll tell you more about him in a moment. And when you take an action step, it's for you to make some notable gains in your life and to share your story and win. Win what? Well, the opportunity to come onto this show as a guest, the opportunity to be in one of our books, which are all about empowering people through laughter and wellness, and put your message into that. Today on the show, we have a special guest, Tony Priddle. Now, we've known Tony for many, many years. We've worked together. He's been instrumental in helping us put together this whole initiative, right? Tony is a past professional athlete, and he has his own story of transformation and growth. He's retired from the industry now, and he helps coaches and athletes to excel by focusing on their mindset. Tony is a sports science major. He is a memory remapping expert, and he'll tell you a little bit more about that. He's a master NLP practitioner and an advanced hypnotherapist. So welcome, Tony.
Hi, Jeff and Mindy. It's been a long time, so it's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with you on this new show.
That's awesome. And for everyone who's listening in, again, if you have questions, reach out, put them right there in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. Tony is calling in from Australia, so I know we woke him up. It's now, what, about 3:30 in the morning for you?
Good morning.
So good morning.
It's nice and early.
So Tony, you were a big-time athlete at one point in your life. Tell us about some of those highlights and what were some of the ahas that moved you on a different trajectory?
Well, so growing up, all I wanted to do was actually represent my country playing sport. It didn't really matter what sport. I was fairly talented in a few different sports, and I had the opportunity to either play professional rugby league or go to the AIS, which is the Australian Institute of Sport, and have the potential to go to the Olympics as a flat water rower. So it really didn't matter what I did in the sporting field. I was always competitive, and sport was just a part of my life. Sport and training were a part of my life. So the opportunity to get paid to run around a sporting field was a dream come true for me. it was literally something I dreamed about all my life, and something that I pursued, and something I was very good at. However, I don't believe I achieved my full potential. And this is one of the reasons I'm here today, is because I think I've found a way that we can actually access our true potential, um, in anything we're trying to be great at, or trying to be good at. Our lives, and what I've worked out, the biggest aha moment I've had is that our mind is as important to train as our physical body.
Absolutely.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, in the last 10 years, in working with people with their minds, and the education I've given myself over that time, I've worked out a lot of different things that I just didn't get told or wasn't educated on as an athlete. So we got hours and hours of the physical training to basically play a sport, but we didn't get taught any of the other skills like confidence, self-belief, self-love, um, how to deal with emotions, how to literally cope with other aspects of life. Because as a 18-year-old leaving a town of 3,000 people, going to the biggest city in the country, um, going to study at university, and being thrown into the biggest, or one of the two biggest sports in the country, there's a lot of stuff that goes along with that. We're talking about media, fame, the benefits that come with that, money, and there is no education. You're virtually thrown to the wolves. You either sink or you swim. You either get it or you don't. And well, I'm sure you'd see it over there in the States and Canada and whatnot, that a lot of athletes, especially professional athletes, go off the rails and can't handle certain situations that they find themselves in. And that's basically a mental skill.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw that so much in the fitness world. You know, someone who, there'd be cases where someone was a first-time athlete, right? And they would win an event, and all of a sudden, the media is directly in their face. There's sponsors, wanting to sign them, and they get this huge attention. And like you're saying, if you're not prepared for that mentally or emotionally, it could either propel you into a situation where you're acting as someone who you're not, or it goes in a downward spiral. But either way, that individual, what we found, wasn't coming from a place of authenticity, because they were just, like you're saying, just thrown into something brand new.
Suddenly they're a superstar, whereas like the day before they were just a regular person. But being a superstar, they felt they had to act like that, and it suddenly wasn't them, and there was a disconnect. So there was no mindset training.
Yeah, well, this is the whole, one of my passions is actually to try to find out what we're really capable of, and the mind-body connection is so important to that. And if we can understand a few basic things about ourselves, and some basic stuff about how our mind works, and well, it's not too basic, because it is not taught in the mainstream, and we can I think there's a lot more actual genetic potential we'll be able to access if we can understand and get our mind in the right place, because there's a big connection between how you feel, so just recovery, for example, big connection with how you feel and whether you're going to be recovering or not in between the training sessions. So one of the biggest things that you could think of in professional sport, or bodybuilding, or even in general life, even at work, if you're not recovering in between and don't give yourself a chance to recover, you're just going to slowly pull your body apart. And that's going to lead down the track to injuries and, probably chronic illness. It would be another thing in the general population world of being in constant stress through not being able to control the mental and emotional aspect of what you're actually dealing with.
Yes,
Yeah.
where your mind goes, your body follows. So that's exactly correct. So what did you notice that allowed you as an athlete to suddenly realize that training your mind is also important?
Well, the sad thing about that is I didn't actually get to do that as an athlete. I only found out at 40 that I could actually change my mind. I've been interested in self-help like virtually all my life because I've wanted to be the best I can be. However, I didn't find anything that worked to make a significant change in my ability to cope in the world until I was in my 40s. So as an athlete, I basically had 6 years playing at professional level, and then my body actually broke and I had 2 years out of the sport. So that left me with a just above average career, and I was playing in the elite competition in this country, and I got 6 years out of a body that virtually just packed up and said, we're not going to do this anymore because of the constant stress on stress in connection with training, and then the mental aspect of in between training sessions and not being able to cope with the whole situation. So the aha moment didn't come when I was an athlete. The aha moment came when I was 40 to 45 and worked out that your mind can be changed, and it can be changed permanently if you have the ability and the skills to understand how it works, why it works like it does, and then how to change it.
Yeah, I mean, even from the comments that I'm seeing people put up about how powerful your thoughts are and how much of an influence that has to you and everyone around you. I remember when we were running the events, at that time, our focus was really on the body. That's what we knew, and that's what we knew to share. In fact, a slogan that we had was eat, sleep, train, repeat, compete, right?
Yep.
And there was nothing even to share. The sleep part was you had to take that day of rest. But for most, that was just, okay, I'm just not going to work out today. There was no emphasis on what to do in that time to keep yourself mentally prepared. From the fitness world, a lot of the athletes understood the visualization aspect, although they may not have recognized that as the word, right? They just knew, okay, picture yourself on stage, picture what you want to make your body and create it and build it. But they had no understanding of the other energy force that they had available to them if they were to tap in. Just like you saying, during your athletic career, you didn't know that part. It was after. So I think that's so key. So if you were to look back in the industry, and I know now you help to train coaches and you help teams to understand what they need to put into play. So what specifically are you putting into their awareness, and how would you, if you were to look at, you're sitting at the top of the sports world, and now you want to inject a new level of awareness and education, what would you tell them?
Well, my whole program starts with one question, and that's tell me who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, or more importantly, know who you're not or what you're not, you then don't have any flexibility, because the question revolves around you being able to disassociate from, well, essentially our emotions, because our emotions are created by the brain based on your past experience. And probably one of the keys to understanding yourself and understanding why you think the way you think. And that is, you never make a conscious decision ever. Our brain doesn't react to the outside world, to the stimulus coming in from the outside world. Your brain predicts how you are going to be in any situation, what your action, what your emotion, what your thought is, what the movement you're making 600 milliseconds before you make that action, emotion, awareness. So the key here is to understand that your brain predicts everything. It does not react to the world.
Mm-hmm. And you know, that's so important, because think of how much further people would go, you know, playing any type of sport, or just in everyone's daily life, you know, to just be able to grasp that. Because I think, you know, in the sport that you played, in rugby, and if I look at it, you know, in the sport of bodybuilding, at least at the time that we were doing it, you're dealing with a lot of very, very strong egos, very, very strong personalities, and who would have never really approached the emotional aspect, right? Or the mindset aspect, because that was too woo-woo, right?
Yeah.
So are you seeing that now evolving, you know, as you're working together with teams, or watching the industry?
It's really interesting when you work with someone, and they actually start to get a grasp of this, the side effect or the direct effect of doing the work and understanding who you are and what you're not, how to actually start to remap memories, because it is the past experience that you've had up until this point in time which creates your personality. So, and understanding what your personality is the software that's been written from the time you're born till now, that gives you the ability to interact with the incoming stimulus, because the incoming stimulus that's coming through your five senses is irrelevant until you make it relevant by your past experience.
And what do
Does
you...
that make sense, guys?
It does, but can you expand and elaborate on what you mean by making it relevant?
Yeah, and just before that, just anyone who has any questions, we are live on Facebook and YouTube and Rumble. If you have any questions, put them up in the chat. We'll see how we could get to those answers. But yeah, go ahead, Tony.
So you've heard of the word perception, right? So it's the way you perceive the information coming in. And I can guarantee that everyone in the world will have a different perception based on the information and based on the way they're trained. And what I mean by trained is how they live in the world. So remember, the personality is a type of software that's written that allows you to interact in the 3D world, which is the world that we live in. If we're not happy with the way we're acting in the world, or the way we're being in the world, or the way we're showing up in the world, we have to be able to rewrite the software, because remember, our brain predicts how we're going to act. We're on a 600 millisecond delay, and this is what's really not taught. Everyone is taught, and it seems like this to be true, that we react to things from the outside world. Like we're not a reaction creature, we're brains a predictive creature. Mm-hmm. And how do we know this? Because we'll use an example of baseball. There is not enough time for the nervous system to act. When a baseball pitcher throws a ball, there's not enough time to see the ball, look at where the ball is going, and then swing a bat. The bat is swinging virtually as the ball leaves the pitcher's hand. It's based on a batter having been thrown a ball at them so many thousands of times. The brain is able to predict the projection of the trajectory of the ball so it can be hit. The brain's not fast enough in the neural connections and the sending signals down into the body to be able to see that ball, know where it's going, and then swing the bat after it's left the pitcher's hand. So if we can understand it, we would not be able to play virtually any sport if we didn't have this predictive mechanism in our brain.
So then would you say that is, as an athlete, getting into that flow state, right? Because you're just letting the motions take course. You're letting that flow. You don't have thought as to, like you're saying, you can't when the ball's coming at you at 100 miles or an hour or more, you don't have that time to do that. So you have to be able to enter this flow state that athletes go into, especially extreme sports athletes.
Yeah, flow states are a brainwave state, which is really it's really interesting that in a regular beta brainwave state, which is what we're sitting and talking in now, our brain's processing about 2,000 bits per second. We know that when athletes get into a flow state, we're going into an alpha theta brainwave state, which is down into in between hypnotherapy and meditation, essentially. So the alpha theta borderline, our brain's actually able to process around 11 million bits of information instead of the 2,000 bits of information. And there's a few things that happen when we go into a flow state. A couple of areas of our prefrontal cortex get knocked out. We lose our ability to judge time. Either time will slow down or time will speed up. And we lose our sense of border of ourselves. So we become one with something. And the little negative narrative voice in our head, it actually shuts down, and we don't have, you mentioned ego before, our ego virtually shuts down. And this is an optimum performance state for an athlete. So there's a few things that happen. Brainwaves change, so the state of the brain changes. We get hit with a cascade of really, really decent hormones. And then, as I said, those three areas of prefrontal cortex shut down. So the zone is an optimum state, but what we're talking about with the predictive model, it is basically if we can change the software that's been developed up until this point in time, we can then change the way you predict in any situation, so you have the ability to handle and cope and reduce stress and incorporate taking out the negative experiences you learn as a child. And there's another area that comes into the education, is that 75% of your personalities is developed by the time you're 8 years old. So we've got a situation that we're dealing with as an adult that has mostly been created before the age of 8. And there's another really interesting aspect of accessing your true potential, or gaining the ability to cope in various situations, is to understand that the program, the software that was developed, most of it happened before you're 8 years old. And if most people understood that, they wouldn't, we could start really culling or becoming mindful about the emotions that we have and being able to start to get on top of them. Because when I said the brain's predictive, there is about a 600 millisecond delay, but at the 200 millisecond mark, the 400 millisecond mark with 200, we have 200 milliseconds to become aware of an emotion, action, a prediction, and put an intervention in to actually stop it or change what we're doing.
Yeah. at every moment, you take that extension, or every millisecond moment, we have that ability to choose whether we want to focus on the positive or the negative. Having that, it's first having that awareness. And I think even what you were saying and getting into that flow state, I see Anna on the chat is talking a lot about, being connected to source. You're just in a different frame than, when you're thinking through each type of action you're going to take based on the situation that's around you.
So
Yeah. So what Anna sounds like she's talking about is what we'd call the superconscious mind, the ability to connect to source, the ability to connect to, and this is something I didn't understand as an athlete, didn't have any clue about in my early years, and about the complete mind, body, spirit aspect of ourselves. So I believe we have a lot more abilities than we've been educated on. And it's a matter of actually starting to understand that we are way more than what we've been told we are. And once we start doing that, I think we're going to be able to access different parts of our potential. And then in the extreme of that is we know that our genes aren't our destiny. We're controlled above the gene, which is called epigenetics. So we're actually controlled by the environment more than we're controlled by the structure of our DNA. So then once you get to a point where you are clear and concise in your thoughts, I sit there and wonder now, because we're just seeing, guys like Joe Dispenza, 7-day meditation retreat, and they're upregulating, 2,500 genes in that 7-day meditation retreat. What could we do with people in the prime of their life? Only training the physical side because they're playing professional sport. If we get the right mental combination with that, so they can actually go to training, and what training does is break down the body, and what we need in between training is recovery. And this goes for everyone, doesn't matter if you're a business person, artist, athlete. We have a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. A sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight side of things, and we have a parasympathetic, which is the rest and relaxation. I sit there and go, well, we don't need, for athletes, stress, which is physical training, on stress, which can be mental. And we're the only creature that virtually has a brain that can create stress or create the sympathetic nervous system without doing any physical activity. So we create a lot of our own problems because we are constantly stressed. And this is what I found when I was an athlete. 6 years of constantly pushing my body on the red line to be a professional athlete, and 6 years of not really mentally coping with everything that goes along with that. I combined stress on stress. I can imagine what my body could have done if I had this only one stress, which was the physical stress, and was able to recover in other situations. And now I understand elevated emotions and being in elevated emotions for long periods of time, what that could have done to the expressions, what genes could have been expressed back in the day to elevate my physical performance.
So what is the key in changing someone's software and elevating their emotions?
Good.
Well, the first key is to understand that you are not an emotion. So this is where who am I comes into play. Because we tend to just go, well, this is who I am. This is what's got me here. So this is just who I am. So one is to understand, and your emotions really just tell you how your brain's predicted this particular event. So one of the keys is to understand that, one, you're not an emotion. Two, is this emotion the way I need to or I want to feel in this situation? So there's a couple of questions you can ask yourself. Am I this emotion? Is this emotion benefiting me? Is it going to get me towards my goal, or is it taking me away from my goal? And this is obviously part of the education, because if you go into an emotion and you understand the physiological outcomes of going into emotion, and that is to go into the fight or flight response, go into a stress response, however you understand this, and what's created physiologically in your body is a release of adrenaline and cortisol. And that, if we have that happen continually, that's called chronic stress. So your body is going into that fight or flight mode. So it needs to run, or it needs to fight, or it freezes. So understanding emotions is probably the most effective way of understanding how your mind is predicting an event. And when you understand that it's a prediction, not a reaction, you then can start to take control, because we can then, there's some pretty simple things we can do, because the great thing about being human is we can imagine something, or we can visualize something, as we were talking about, as Jeff mentioned before. I don't make a very big distinction between visualization and imagination, because visualization's the technical term that mostly athletes use about picturing themselves doing something. Well, we could just call that imagination, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can imagine something, it is actually true to us, what we bring into our conscious awareness, essentially. So our imagination is just as real as something that physically happens, and we understand that through a basketball free throw. So you can imagine you go through that movement of throwing a basketball, and your brain, the neurons in your brain will fire just like they fire when you actually do the throwing of the basketball. Mm-hmm. So what we imagine to be true and what we do, they're the same to our mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So we can actually imagine a elevated emotion, and it's as simple as actually just being able to close your eyes and think of a time, and depending on what emotion you want to feel, but think of a time when you felt the most in love, when you felt the happiest, when you felt ecstatic. You can actually close your mind and bring that into your body, because what happens when we think about something and an emotion is created, it's a peptide being released into the body from the brain. So when you have a feeling, it's an actual chemical reaction in your body created by a thought. So we have peptides released. And we can actually get addicted to these peptides, just like we can get addicted to, a narcotic.
So then, if we look at it from a different perspective, it's about someone really having that self-love for themselves. Even if you take it down to an athlete wants to excel in what they're doing. And there's the pathway where the athlete could rely on external things, whether it's performance-enhancing things or the dedication that they're spending on the training, the repetition of those movements to get to that certain point. And it also can be focusing on the self-love aspect so that they can get into that elevated emotion, so that then they can visualize what it is that they're looking to achieve, and then it would change the entire approach that someone has to whether it's their sport, their creative outlet, or business, or just interacting in life, right, Mind?
Yeah, it's also, I heard from you that it's almost like a fake it till you make it. So if you're not actually feeling the emotion that you want to feel, you just imagine that emotion and bring it into yourself so that within the situation that you're in, that emotion now applies to that. Is that correct?
Like pretend you're an actor,
Well,
right? Be the
yeah,
actor.
well,
Yeah.
So it comes down to, what do we class as a skill? So I believe confidence is a skill. I believe that happiness is a skill. I believe that sadness, and we'll go there, anxiety is actually a skill. So, and I believe, and don't get me wrong, there's going to be people out there who have a genetic predisposition to being anxious or depressed, right? But with what we know about epigenetics now, we know it's a lot smaller number than the pharmaceutical companies will let on. And so if we understand how the brain works, and we understand that it's called Hebb's law, and that is what wires together, or what fires together wires together. So I take it from an athletic background. If you practice something over and over and over and over and over again, and you do it at a very high level, you are going to get very good at the skill of hitting a baseball, say. So that's called, it's a skill to hit the baseball. A emotion that's created on a neurological pathway in the brain, and swinging a bat, which is created on a neurological pathway in the brain, are essentially the same thing. So if you practice a negative thought pattern over and over and over and over and over again, are you going to get very good at that negative thought pattern? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
And most people I talk to, when they come in and they say they are anxious, or they feel anxious a lot of the time, you will be talking to them and you'll go, well, how long have you felt like this? And it'll be a year or longer normally. And you will, if you explain it to them in the right way, they will be able to understand that it's a skill that they've practiced. And if it's something that they've practiced, I think this is the best part of it. If it's something they've practiced, can we do something different to unpractice that skill, or can we change that skill if you've just learnt it? And the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. So we can change the way someone swings a bat physically. We can change the way your thoughts are directed in an emotional context. There's really no difference. So that's why I talk about these things as skills. Probably the biggest issue here is that if 75% of your personality is created by the time you're 8 years old, the software that's been written is, most of the software that's been written is normally before you're 8 years old. So we've got people all over the world now acting like 8-year-olds and I think a lot of people will be able to relate to this. Have you thrown a tantrum that seems ridiculous in a particular moment after the event? And I can bet most people will say that they have. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at an 8-year-old in action, or 8 and under year old in action, because the mind doesn't understand the period of time. The mind has a program that's written, and this is how I'm going to act with the stimulus coming in, and how I felt, how my body felt at the moment in time. The brain makes a prediction on how you're going to act. And we call this program ourselves. We think it's us.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually not us. It's just a program.
So then,
When people start to get these aspects of this aspect of the training, the education and training, we can start to let go of past actions, so we can create exactly what we want to be able to do in the future.
So essentially, you're saying that somebody can change their personality.
Absolutely. You tell me now if your personality was the same at 20 than it is now.
nope. No, I mean,
And this is what people think that it's just, this is fixed. It's like having, if you got an app on your phone and it's not doing the thing that you want it to do, what are you going to do? Are you going to put up with it? Or are you going to get a new app? You're going to find one that actually works for you.
or you're going to upgrade the one that you have.
Or you upgrade. Well, do we see that all these apps and all these programs are constantly being upgraded all the time?
Yeah.
Most people haven't upgraded their app from their 8-year-old self. They've actually just, so think about it. If we have 75% of our personality done by the time you're 8 years old, and you have 25% of your personality built after that, what I find is most people add to the 25%, and that's where most self-help comes in. So we're trying to put new strategies. We're trying to build on top of a really, really solid foundation. So what I've found is if we can start to rebuild the foundation, 75% of your personality, when you start to change the things that you believed happened to you when you were a child, and I'm not saying things didn't happen. I'm not saying trauma didn't happen. What I'm saying is the way you perceive the trauma was with the ability of the mind, the ability and the capacity that mind had in that moment. As a 52-year-old man now, I have a whole bunch of different things that I can add into the memories that I had when I was younger. So then I can understand what really happened in those moments and not what I believed to happen in those moments with the capacity of consciousness that I had at the time.
Yeah, so, to use the example of the programming, I remember when the internet was just starting, right? And you would log on and you would click to get your email, and then you'd go take a shower, have a coffee, have breakfast, and come back. Well, it's like as if someone is trying to interact today on like a cell phone and trying to accomplish something in today's time using that same software. I mean, it just won't work. It's like, it's the wrong language even, right? It's just, there's a disconnect. And when people are viewing the world from their model of the world, it's, well, what is their model of the world? And if their model of the world is just still trapped in that 8-year-old consciousness or awareness, then they can't take those next steps to enjoy their life or really enter into a feeling of self-love and happiness in a true sense.
If we can understand emotions and where they come from and how they're produced, so they're a feeling that you have in your body through a peptide. So there's nothing really mysterious about emotions when you do that, and they don't just happen. They've actually been learned. If I can use this as this example, if we get 3-year-olds and put them into a room and there's black, white, brown, Asian, whatever's in the room, those 3-year-old kids are going to interact with each other without any bias whatsoever. There's going to be no racism. There's going to be no I'm better than because I'm a particular color, all this kind of stuff. So think about it. Racism, and think about how those kids act naturally, and we are born with nearly a blank slate, and then we're educated into the system that we're educated into. So I think our natural state is actually love and joy, and we're educated into the negative frames, the negative emotions, the negative situations. So
no, go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead, Tom. I was
So
going
if
to. You go. You're at the other end of the world.
Yeah. So if the negative emotions are actually trained in, we can train them out.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I see the connection to potential, because if you look at a scale and the vibrational frequency of a particular emotion, and this can be done with, okay, guys, tell me how it feels when you're sad. What happens to the body when you feel sad? We feel heavy, we feel slow, we feel weighed down. I think everyone can relate to that. Tell me what happens to the body when we feel joy. We are light, we are energized, and we are vibrant, right? So which energy is going to be the best energy for your physical performance? Which energy is going to be the best energy to take to work every day? Which energy is going to be the best energy to be in a relationship with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that kind of ties in. Sorry, you were still going.
Yeah, so we have a energy field that's like this big donut around us. The more negative emotions we feel, the more that energy is drawn into us, the more matter we become, the heavier we become, the more solid we become. And the higher the levels of emotions that we feel, the bigger that field gets around us, so the lighter we become. And that sounds really similar to what we call in spiritual terms enlightenment, right? So how do you become lighter? You feel more positive emotions. You feel more elevated emotions. It's actually quite simple when you break it down. And it has to be simple for me because I played in one of the what you would call the dumbest positions you could play in professional sport. The most physical position you can play in professional sport. So it has to be simple for me. And when you look at it like this, to become enlightened, how about just feeling elevated emotions majority of the time? What effect is that going to have on the expression of the protein that's being built out of your DNA? Can we upregulate the expression of protein to create Superman? I actually think we can.
So on that note, for everyone who's watching on Facebook and YouTube and Rumble and anywhere else that you're picking this up, there's a Japanese philosophy called Kaizen, which is taking small incremental steps, leading, in a course way, from what we're talking about of transformation. So that's why we're so key on giving people the ability to take those action steps, to have an action that they can take where they can notice a measurable gain, right, in moving themselves along. So what would you suggest someone does as an action step there where they can start to take that, that first step?
Well, the easiest thing someone can start to do is actually start to recognize the emotions that they're feeling in a particular moment. Understanding the emotion is a prediction, not a reaction. Once you can start to recognize this emotion, you ask yourself, is this serving me? Is this going to create a better future, or is it going to create a negative future? And really simple process here is to have a practiced elevated emotion ready for when you start to feel a negative emotion, and negative emotions in brackets here, because it's not negative emotions, it's showing you the way your brain's been trained to deal with this particular situation. So first thing, recognize the emotion. Ask, is it benefiting me or is it not benefiting me? Is it getting me closer towards my goal or further away from my goal? And then add a intervention into that and change the way you're feeling in the moment. And at the start, that will be a difficult process because you haven't done it before or you haven't been trained to do it. The more you do it, the easier it'll get and the better you will be at it. So it's a thing about becoming really mindful about how your brain is predicting an event, and then having an intervention ready to overwrite the algorithm that is predicting that event. And that is one way to start to change the way the prediction will work. And you'll have to do that repeatedly, keep catching the negative emotion and slipping in an intervention. So that's one way you can actually change, and that's probably the easiest and fastest thing I can recommend here. But I would suggest if you want to be able to transform your mind faster, you'll need to come and learn how to remap memories, because that's going into those first 8 years and actually changing the way your brain remembers a memory. And when you do that, the result is a instant transformation of the way your brain will predict a particular memory, predict an event in the moment.
Do you have an example of that?
As in a memory remap?
Correct.
Okay. So when I started this work, I had a very decent fear of authority. So this was in my 40s. So my life has revolved around trying to prove myself to my father. And then as a professional athlete, I had a bunch of these people called coaches that were dominant male figures in my life. And I had a very big desire to please them. So when I started doing this work, this was actually the first memory remap I ever did. And I was struggling to do the work because I didn't believe in what I was being taught. However, so when we have the ability to bring into our conscious awareness whatever we choose to bring into our conscious awareness. So I teach a skill of being able to slow the brain waves down. Sounds a bit like meditation, which it sort of is. Slow the brain waves down and then start to bring into your awareness, bring into your conscious mind an aspect of your mind, which is the area where we go is called the subconscious mind. So we go into the subconscious mind and we ask particular questions. And it was, when was the first time that we felt a particular emotion? And in this particular case, I went into my subconscious mind and this memory came back to me in a flash, came back to me that I was learning to mow the lawn. And I was 6 years old and my dad was teaching me to mow the lawn from the balcony. I pushed the lawnmower down one way, turned around, come back up, and I went off the grass strip. So you know how the wheels are supposed to line up and the mower comes up? I went off that. So I left this grass strip. And my dad was a pretty grumpy dude. So he came down off the balcony, he kicked me up the backside and went, "You hopeless and I'll beep out the words that he used. You're basically that I was hopeless and I couldn't do anything right. And this is when I was 6 years old. So from that point in time when I was 6 to 40 years old until I actually remapped the memory, I had a fear of authority, and I was struggling to, and I always had to show people, or always tried to show people that I was more than what I thought I was, because I didn't think I was good enough, because that's the belief that was created in that moment when I was 6 years old. When I changed that belief, or when I changed the way I saw that incident, it completely let go of my need to prove to other people that I was worthwhile.
So what
So
was it that you actually changed in that belief to help you prove that to yourself?
Well, so as a 6-year-old, when your father comes and kicks you up the backside and tells you can't do anything right, you think that's aimed at you. So what I got to understand when I could actually see that incident from 6 as a 40-year-old was why my father actually did that to a 6-year-old. So he was in his 40s. He got forced into the job he was doing, which was a school teacher, by his father, because his father was a farmer, and farming was very insecure work. Working for the government was very secure. My dad wanted to be a farmer. He didn't want to be a school teacher. And he then had a wife and 3 kids, and he was bored with his life. So he was feeling frustrated because he was showing this kid how to mow the lawn and he couldn't mow the lawn.
Oh.
So the 6-year-old didn't realize that dad was frustrated and he was bored, and he used to go to the pub all the time to alter his state, to drink away, to try to get out of his head so he could deal with the life that he was given. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't a bad life. It was just that it wasn't what he thought it was going to be like in that time. So the 6-year-old then could see that his father was bored stupid, and he thought he was stuck, and he took his emotions out on the 6-year-old. Yeah. And the 6-year-old went, hang on a minute, because the 6-year-old's now 40, and the memory comes back up now.
Right.
And time, your mind doesn't have any time in it. It doesn't know you're still not 6. It just has this emotional attachment to a thought that I'm not good enough and I've got to prove myself. So don't get me wrong, it was a great thing to get me to be a professional athlete, because I had this thing, I wanted to prove myself to other people. But what got me there didn't take me any further, which is something that if we understand what gets us to where we are, will not get us to a further point. So when I understood this and I realized that my dad was bored, and what had nothing to do with me, I was learning to mow the lawn. Like are we allowed to make mistakes? Do 6-year-olds make mistakes? Well, the answer is yes. I then had the ability to see in that moment that all my dad needed was me to actually, instead of being upset and frustrated at this situation, imagine if I was 6 and he did that and I walked up to him and gave him a hug and went, Dad, it's okay. Like, I mean, I'm 6. I'm just learning to mow the lawn. I love you.
Aww.
The whole thing would have just turned him, and it would have changed me, right? I wouldn't have got into that state.
Yeah.
The way you remember a memory is the way you remember the memory forever then. So literally, I showed the 6-year-old how to deal with that situation and change the way I remembered the memory. And instantaneously, that belief about myself was gone. It evaporated.
That's awesome.
And I had a real life incident that actually proved that to me.
What was it?
and it was really interesting. Like where we lived at the time, I was driving home from the gym, and I was pulled over by the police to have a random breath test. And this was the week before I did the belief, and I'm not, like I said, I wasn't real good with authority, so I needed to prove myself to people. So in the breath test, the police officer came up, did the breath test, and then he asked for my license, and I was a little bit indignant about being asked for my license when I had zero alcohol on my breath. And the police officer got very authoritarian and frustrated, and I started arguing with him, and it wasn't probably the best thing to be doing, right?
You think?
So yeah, I know. Well, we now know in the last 2 years, but we won't go into that. But anyway, so with that, this was like 10 years ago. So I did the work on that weekend. The next week I was at the gym and coming home, same place, same random breath test. So same situation happened. I drove up, literally got my license out, handed out the window, said to the officer, yep, okay, blah, blah, blah. I did the random breath test, got my license back, put it in the car and drove off. And my wife at the time looked at me and went, what just happened? And I'm going, what do you mean? She went, well, remember last week and the difference to this week? There was no anxiety, no level of anything for me to want to antagonize the police officer. And there was no fear or worry in me when I drove up that second time.
Wow.
Wow, that's a great example.
These are the things that 75% of your personality is done by the time you're 8 years old.
Yeah.
Imagine how much stuff is there to be remapped and how much that controls your future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anna says, sorry, go on.
So that just gives you one example of how that can change instantaneously change the way your brain predicts a future event.
Yeah. Well, again, we're live here on YouTube and Facebook and Rumble. I see Anna's putting some questions and making some remarks.
She actually says, good example. Wow, I think we all can relate in some way.
Yeah. And Welsh asked, is this something that could help him? And, Welsh, I would say head over to the website, rethinkfit.social, and click on a button that says Action Steps. And you could scroll down and you could see a little bit more detail about what Tony's talking about. Tony's website is right there, which is retranscend.net, and you can learn a little bit more. But take one of these steps. It's so important on a journey of transformation. The biggest part is just starting, is doing something that's going to move you forward in a way that's going to make you feel better. I mean, that's the ultimate outcome here.
And now that people are aware that you can actually change how you're feeling and your state of mind and your personality and how you're navigating yourself through the world and how you feel about yourself, it makes sense to take Tony's call to action so that you can actually make a change within yourself so that you feel better.
Yeah, and when you do, I'm not going to say if, it's when you do, and when you decide to make that decision, you'll see on the website there's a particular hashtag to use. I think it's WeTranscend. And connect with Tony. Share your story. We want to hear it too.
We do.
We want to hear what ahas you have, what kind of notable gains you have. Why do we want to hear it? Well, because I think that the more people who share allow more people to see that they can do it too. And of course, there's prizes to be won, like coming onto the show, and sharing what your story is all about. And so many other things. But the biggest prize is you being able to have a new awareness and a new way to start to become happier and really appreciate what self-love and self-care is about. So Tony, as we're getting close to wrapping things up, and it was awesome, to have had that mind remapping that you did, and be able to change that, and to have something that the universe put in front of you 1 week apart to be able to show you that it actually worked, that's got to be like that, I'm on the right track, right?
Well, this is it's been really interesting. I've been doing this for 10 years now, and it's really hard to say where the end result is going to be, because I think the end result is always evolving, and it's a process of really understanding that you are not the program, you are not your education, you are not your emotional state, you are not the country you were born in, even. So when you can start to separate these things, it makes it so much easier to understand and actually start to deal with the situations that you find yourself in.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? It was awesome having you on the show today. For everyone, all the brave hearts watching, Tony has been instrumental in, us putting together what this whole Rethink Fit initiative is about, which is really rethinking the way that you do everything, how you treat yourself, how you speak to others, what your energetics are like, the relationships you have, and how your mental, emotional, and physical state are. That's what this show is about. It's to help you uncover and realize when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And to do that, you've got to take that first step, and that first step forward.
Yeah, so as long
And
as
you literally can't change the way you look at things until you understand the way your brain perceives information and structures the way you're reacting in the moment. So rethinking fit, or rethinking your life, is essential to being able to do or get what you're actually looking for right now.
What an awesome way to end off our first show here. This was awesome. Thank you to all the brave hearts who've been watching live on Facebook and YouTube and Rumble, and everyone who's watching the replay of this. To really find out more about what's going on, go to braveheartnation.com. You can learn about the treatments and courses and trainings and holidays that you can have out here where we're at in Ixtapa, Mexico. There's the New World Practitioner, the Whole Life Coach, that's starting on April 30th to May 9th. We're going to be there.
Yep.
The Wolf Non-Surgical starts just after that in May and wraps up on May 22nd. And we'd love to see you here. We'd love to see you take part in things. Head over to rethinkfit.social, click on the action steps, and see what you can do to take your first step in a journey of loving better how you think, feel, act, look, and dream. Thank you so much, Tony, for getting up at 2:30 in the morning, bearing with us through some of the technical startups on the show. This was an awesome first show, and really excited for everyone out there. Join us every Monday at noon Central Time to be part of this journey, and make sure to come with some questions, and we'll see what we can do to help you out with the guests that we have and everyone around. There's also a book that we've put out called The Ridiculous Adventures of Servadand, which is a lighthearted comedy book where we've interwoven messages of empowerment and self-growth and self-love in a way that is fun, will make you think, and hopefully make you laugh. And you can find out more about that at laughoutloud.life. So my name is Jeff.
And I'm Mindy.
And that was Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. And again, head over to braveheartnation.com to find out how you can participate in some of the things that are going to help you move forward on your journey. Thank you, everyone.
You know, it's not good enough to have the most powerful courses, treatments, and training. We want to deliver to you the adventure of a lifetime that's going to last a lifetime. And I'm going to take you on a little adventure right now and show you what we are going to deliver. What are we going to deliver? We are going to deliver the authentic you, the real you, the genius inside. How would you like to become not just the master of your mind, but the master of your body, the master of your life? You know what? The most important world is your world, and we're about to show you how to create it.
Found Dr. Wolf and all his positivity and trying to reshape our way of thinking and help me be a better person, a better mom, better wife. I'm glad I found him in person in Ixtapa, Mexico.
Never limit yourself to beautiful, because that's what you are. Take a look at this beautiful place. We all deserve beauty in our life. You need to create a new program that is unlimited when it comes to things that are beautiful, things that make you happy, things that make you shine, things that make you feel excited. Let's get excited.
This guy's got something really interesting to say and he's sharing it really openly and we're just really not caring what other people think, and I just thought that was really empowering.
What I've learned in my life is this: to be the change you wish to be the change you wish to see, Braveheart, you have to understand you take life one step at a time.
Dr. Wolf, as many people will have seen, is very direct and straight and will take you to the edge of the cliff, as he says, and then pull you back just in time.
Never lose your focus. Never lose your dream, because you are the dream maker. It's called image, but guess what? It's your imagination. The image that you hold creates the thought that you live with. That thought creates an emotion that creates a frequency, and we know that the invisible creates the physical. I mean, that's quite obvious. So be the power that you seek, and understand something, that all your thoughts matter. And guess what? Unless you're willing to take a look at those thoughts and retrain your brain, change your personality, you'll never change your reality, and your reality could become infinite.
He's a wealth of information, and I love it.
You were created by your creator to create. So let's create something amazing together.
I found Dr. Wolf and I went, wow, here's a truth speaker. And he spoke to my soul and he spoke truth.
So tell me what you think of the destination that I came up with my imagination to hold the whole life coach certification for you. Understand something. It's all about beauty. It's all about adventure. It's all about stimulating the mind, okay? And understanding that your mind is unlimited. And that is what the whole life coach certification is all about. In the whole life coach certification, we are going to go deeper. We have people coming to us, professionals coming to us, from doctors to nurses to accountants to oil riggers to mothers that want to expand their life. And when they come here, they go, I need to learn to help my family, or I want to improve my business. But guess what? We get into their business. When they leave, they become the change that they wish to see, that they wish to be. They become the gift to the world, because when you can stay in the present, and you can't do that until you have unconditional love and care for yourself. And I'll tell you something right now. I have hardly even found 1 out of 1,000 practitioners, or even so-called whole life coaches, that can hold the present moment and own it and then give it as a gift. And this is what I'm going to give to you. And when you come here, this is where you're going to come into this room when you need to find alignment, you need to find balance, and you need to get back into your lion heart breath, because we're going to go deep into your heart and we're going to become the spark that you seek.
And actually what I really love about Dr. Wolf's teachings is that unconditional love is literally it. And then you're like, how can it be that easy? That's just silly. So, but it's really not.
Come play, come stay, come train with us today. Understand something. I know we have fear, but understand, that's just false evidence appearing real. I get it. Stick your toe in, feel the water, but then I want you to dive right in because
How I found my brave heart was through Daryl. He really teaches you to go within and go in through your heart and not your mind, because your heart's a lot more connected to so much more than your mind. Your mind is just so conditioned and your heart is just so open and beautiful.
you're the answer that you've been looking for. Let me teach you how to fly. What does that mean? First, love yourself, Braveheart. Let's take life in and win.
I had just lost my husband a couple of years ago. With his passing, he gave me the greatest gift to love myself. But Dr. Wolf gave me the greatest gift in understanding that.
I had a dream 3 years ago that I would live in Mexico and I would have this training center, this teaching center, this treatment center that would touch the world. Your dreams are never too big. And when they start to create a little bit of anxiety, turn them into excitement. And get excited because this is your life.
He's the first doctor that I have encountered that has truly given me the truth, and not just half truths, but the full truth. So it's been revolutionary for me in my healing process.
And this, my friend, when you take on the dream of all dreams and you realize that if you stay connected to your breath, that you can have it all. Do not let anybody take your breath away. Do not let anybody steal your dream, okay? Listen, God gave you imagination. This is your sandbox of life. Take your life back. Right now, we are teaching courses to people that have come from all over the world, and the government is saying you can't travel, you can't breathe, you can't have this, you can't come together. Yes, we will. And we will do it with unconditional love for each other. And we will learn to grow. We will not judge each other. We'll observe and see where we can support each other. But at the same time, we will hold the Braveheart line, because this is the only way that we can grow. So find your roar, because you're so much more. And learn this. You are the unconditional love that you've been looking for. You are the dream maker. I can't wait to see you. We want to become that small piece of the puzzle that brings your dream together. Thank you. Let me ask you a question. What do you think it would take to turn your life around? I can tell you right now, I learned that a long time ago, what the key was. And anybody that has been able to perfect the perfect day on an emotional, physical, and spirit level knows this. The answer is massive, personal action. That's what it's going to take for you to turn your life around. And to turn your life around, you're going to have to go within if you want to change without. And that's the bottom line. And you know, people think that they can do it like with a consultation, or maybe they can do it with a telephone call or a Band-Aid or a 911 emergency, a treatment. But understand, that's not the way it is. The day that you realize that when you master your mind is the only time you're going to master your body. Forget your life. That's always going to be just random luck until you know that you must become the master of your day. From the moment you rise until you gently close your eyes, you must be the only authority for you. And if you think that getting an hour consultation is going to do it, it's not. If you think that going for therapy is going to do it, it's not. You have to submerge yourself into what we would call the personal treatment and training. And you need to do that from anywhere from 6 days to 10 days, or you need to come for my whole life coach certification, because if you don't go in deep, you'll never make changes. They say it takes 10,000 times for you to repeat something before it becomes a prominent, dominant thought. And if you understood that 70 to 90% of all your thoughts are not yours, and they say that 70% of your thoughts are toxic, tell me they're not. Take a look at the majority of the population. 92% of the population has an autoimmune disease, which means the body is attacking itself. Before that, though, the person was attacking themselves on a subconscious, unconscious level. And that, my friend, is the bottom line, and why you must take a personal treatment and training and go deep and understand how to run your life. What that means is learning how to think, how to drink, how to eat, and knowing when somebody is mistreating you, when someone is disrespecting you, because until you honor and respect yourself, no one else is going to do it. So understand, this is your life. If you want to live your passion and purpose, then you must become the master of your mind to become the master of your body so that you can become the light for your family. So please, consider this. You've got the time and you've got the money, because you're going to change the rest of your life for the rest of your life, and that's my guarantee to you.